People who call into 911 are almost never having what we could consider to be a good day. They are calling because they need help in some form or fashion. Because of this, their nerves are often frayed. So too, the emergency telecommunicators taking their call and dozens like theirs throughout their shift can often become on edge. The meeting of these two elements can lead to complaints about the center's performance that supervisors must evaluate and, if necessary, provide correction to. This is Lifeline. Welcome back, and thank you for joining us on another episode of Lifeline 911 Podcast. I am your co-host, Gary, and with me, as always, is your host, Erica.
Hello.
Today, we are talking about complainants into 911, meaning those people that are not necessarily satisfied with their service that they get from their comm center. This can happen frequently, and it can sometimes be with merit, but very frequently it's found to be unfounded,
Yeah.
I would say.
Yeah, absolutely. And I know you have, just as we've sat across from each other, and I don't know about you, but when you got those crazy calls and had to deal with an irate complainant, I was oftentimes going, better you than me, Gary.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's
I'm
like
just
kind
being
of
real about it. Mm.
yeah, it's kind of like a game of hot potato. Like especially if they're like
Yes.
a repeat caller, like they'll call back and back again, and making their complaints. And by the time they get up to the supervisor level, they often are, or may have started very agitated even, and it's just trying to maintain composure while you're listening to people scream terrible things at you.
Yes.
Um,
And I like to say that I have been called everything but a child of God.
hmm
Yes.
Yeah.
And not just by the people on the 911 line. These are the ones who have escalated up to us, and they can be brutal, some of them.
Yes. And despite how upsetting they can be and intransigent with whatever their complaint is, you know you you still have to maintain a level of professional decorum with them, even though they may have been told 500,000 times there's what you want to have happen can't happen.
Cannot
So
happen.
these are your options.
Yeah.
So how so before like we get into like what you say, I guess what kind of headspace do you try and get yourself into? Because sometimes you'll have lead up time with the
Hmm.
call because usually it'll be a warm transfer and they'll say like one of our operators will say, "Hey, I got this complainant on the line. It's such and such," and sometimes you'll just know the name. Like
Oh,
I think
yes.
yeah, as you were saying, every comm center pretty much has at least one person that they're like, everybody knows what this person's name is because they call so frequently.
So I don't know if there's a name for it, but I'm not always successful, but I try to get into a headspace of detachment, and that's to remove, again, I will disclaimer, not always successful. But
Sure.
I try to get into that headspace of whatever they're calling about, it's not about me. It has little to do with me. Matter of fact, the only part I really play in it is their hope that I can end up giving them what it is they want. So it Erica, you have to remove your emotions from it. You have
Hmm.
to Now this is all I talk a good game, but this is what I mean. It's what I hope to do. So go ahead and transfer the call in. The whole time I'm saying to myself, do not lose your cool. I don't care what they say. Don't care how they say it. Do not lose your cool. That's pretty much where I start. Where
Hmm.
I end up, sometimes different.
Could be anywhere. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. Like it's kind of a mental prep because
Hmm.
every person, almost every person you talk to, is going to be just angry and mean for no reason.
Hmm.
And so I try and like get into that headspace of like, I am representing the department here. I'm trying to solve this person's issue. Let's start
Hmm.
off that way,
Yeah.
and then 85 times out of 100, it'll devolve into some cray cray, and we won't end up where I'm trying to get us to. But
Yeah,
those are my sort of starting goals of like, let's stay calm, let's stay respectful,
sure.
and let's work the problem.
And and I'm glad you said that stay respectful, because I, in my younger, less mature, less experienced days of just, and this is true of whether you're a supervisor taking an escalated caller or just, going about your everyday job as the 911 operator, whether you're taking what is it, exigent emergent calls or non-emergent calls. It's easy to get into the headspace of we're the police
Hmm.
and what we say goes, and we don't have to be kind. We don't have to inject an element of customer service into the conversation.
Hmm.
And I was all about that life in the beginning. I was like, ah, doggone it, I work for the police. And first of all, why are you calling me with whatever this foolishness is? And even if it escalated, up to the supervisor level in my younger, less experienced time, I kind of carried that with me. Now, like you said, I try to remember the first thing I'm doing is representing the department. And we've all, maybe not all of them, but I know I have heard that term, conduct unbecoming.
Yeah, yeah.
And it's like a catch-all that can get you in a whole lot of trouble. So even if you don't do anything specific to violate an SOP or a customer service, rule of engagement, you can get yourself in a
Rule
lot
of
of trouble.
engagement. I like that.
Yeah, yeah, because it's true. We have, I mean, yeah, it's the same principle. And if you're not careful with having the mission of the department at the forefront of your thinking, even as a
Hmm.
supervisor dealing with an escalated, upset, irate caller, that's not at the forefront. You can find yourself in hot water, as yours truly has managed to do more than a couple of times through the years. Where the
Hmm.
complaint I was dealing with, I ended up being the subject of the complaint. What the?
That's not supposed to happen.
Exactly. Wait a minute, I was doing fine, and then I wasn't.
Yeah, and I mean, because you like, as you said, in younger days when we're less experienced,
Mhm.
it's harder to kind of control the ego or id or
That's the
whatever
word.
Freud would call it.
I'm so glad you said that, because you're right. That's it. It's the ego. That's the word I was
Mhm.
missing when I was talking about it earlier. We're the police and yeah, the
Mhm.
things. Yes, yes, that's the word.
Yeah. And like nowadays, I really try, at least the first 30 or 40 times, that is, especially if it's like a repeat caller, but like for the first part of a conversation, I really try and figure out what the problem is and like how it can be solved, because
Hmm.
they're coming to me with whatever their complaint is. Like they're not happy with you know their calls taking too long to be dispatched on, or how the officer handled the call,
Yeah.
whatever. And I'm trying to figure out, like, okay, I know you were, assaulted the other day.
Hmm.
Your case has not been assigned to a detective at this time.
Hmm.
So, like, let me try and explain to you the process, and, try and help you understand that, so like, what's going to happen going forward. But a lot of times they'll just be, like, I want to have it this way, and that's the only way I want to have it.
Yeah.
And also, do you notice that people tend to wait until like the worst possible time to call? Like they'll call like at like midnight on Sunday and be like, "Hey, I
Yes.
need
I
to."
want to talk. I want to talk to the detective that's assigned to my case, and
Yeah.
I'm thinking, are you serious right now? And that's not to be ugly, but it's like it's midnight
Hmm.
on a Sunday.
Yeah.
I promise you, if the detective that you are speaking of is on duty right now, it's not because they want to be, and it's not because it's their normal hours.
Hmm.
Typically, detectives don't work in the middle of the night unless they are, in a specialty unit, like
Right.
homicide or something. But it
Yeah.
not those cases that are in the investigative phase. They're just not available to talk to Joe Citizen about what's about this newest development or this piece of information that they just now remembered at midnight after. 5 beers.
Yeah. And it's it's like why do you wait till like the worst time to call for like, especially if it's a question that's like an admin kind of thing, like you need to have people here
Yes.
that are the Monday through Friday folks, 8 to 5.
Yeah.
Like
Yes.
don't call in the middle of like bar close to like want us to pick up a piece of like evidence from a case 3 weeks ago. It's
I
really a bad
promise
time.
it's really not going to be a good time for us because we're dealing with drunk 30, and it's just, not to mention these people are not available, which actually makes me think about one of the things that I had to learn when dealing with these kinds of calls is how to say no without being difficult.
Hmm.
Meaning, I want XYZ. Well, how do you say no without being ugly? You're they're not going to be happy when you say no, because no matter how you say it, the answer is no. So when they want to, let's say, I want to speak to the watch commander about my case. No, ma'am, I'm sorry, that's just not possible.
Yeah.
And it's okay to say that is not possible, and here is why. Because that's not what they do. The watch
Hmm.
commander is there to oversee operations, if you will. Patrol. There has to be someone in charge, ultimately in charge, and that is what they are handling. They're handling things as they come up in the moment. And I've actually had to
Hmm.
explain that to someone before, without getting into too much,
Sure.
too many technicalities. But the watch commander does not manage detective issues. That's not what they do. If you were to end up speaking to the to watch commander, do you know how bad life must be for you to be able to speak to them? That No. Well, I'm a
Hmm.
citizen. I pay taxes. You are absolutely right, and I thank you for that. By the way, I pay him too. But I still can't do that. I still can't do what it is
Hmm.
you're asking for. And sometimes you end up
Yeah.
going round and round and round, and you just don't get anywhere. And those are the ones that make me crazy because I can't resolve it.
Hmm. Yeah. And like you're telling them like this is not an option what you want here, because I guess sometimes they don't understand like, we're rooting for them. We want them to be happy because then, at the very least, we no longer have to talk to them if they're happy and they can go on about their way and we can go on about our way.
Sure.
So, yeah. So, I want them to have whatever their situation is to be resolved.
Mm-hmm.
But, like, you can't, like, there's a process for things. Like,
Sure.
you call the government, there's going to be a lot of steps involved. It's not going to be quick.
Agreed.
And so, I'm going to try and give you the best, quickest, most expedited route to what you're looking for.
Mm-hmm.
It may not be exactly what you want, but this is going to be the best way to do it. And then, as you said, it's that round and round that really just kind of drives you insane
Yes.
because there's only so many ways you can say no politely before it's just like, nope, uh, this is not going
Yeah.
to happen.
Yeah.
Sorry,
And
buddy.
and I think, which probably is going to be given away in the title of this, the whole idea is to resolve the call, hopefully to their satisfaction, if you can, without, sacrificing your SOPs and your expectations of your leadership on how to manage whatever it is they're asking for. You're trying desperately to do that without losing your cool. If you can handle it, great, but if you can't, how to
Hmm.
say no without becoming disrespectful and without getting into that ego headspace.
Hmm.
And I guess, I don't know, how is there a formula for that though?
Well, I mean, I think that you kind of touched on it. Like you want to stay respectful to the person, even if they're not staying respectful to you, and that
Hmm.
can be really, really
Yeah.
hard when uh, not only are they not being respectful to you, but they're just being no, I
Mean.
want it this way. Yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
maybe if like, if somebody had kids, they might have a better idea on how to deal with somebody kind of just basically throwing a tantrum and saying, "No, no, no, I want it this
I
way."
want it this
But
way.
yeah, but when you're dealing with like an adult, you expect, a little bit more reason and common
Adulting.
sense. Yeah.
You're
Um
expecting a little more adulting.
Yeah,
But you know
but
what?
you don't get it.
But you said it. You said it at the in the intro. Is they're not calling us because this is the best day ever. They're not calling us because we have gotten those calls where they call to say thank you, but usually that's not the case.
Mm-mm,
So they're
no.
already in a headspace of needing help, and depending on what it is, they are feeling violated. They
Mm-hmm.
feeling I don't know if disrespected is the right way to put it, but they're feeling a lot of times like they're getting the runaround because
Yeah.
they'll make the first phone call, and that whoever they get on the phone says, "No, that's not us. Let me transfer you over here." And then they get
Mm-hmm.
over here and they say, "Oh, wait, no, you got to go back to where you just got back from." Or, "Hang on, I got to have you talk to yet another person." And
Yeah.
in their head, they're just envisioning just this hamster wheel. They're just running around in circles, and each person that they talk to, which I would say we are guilty of in our profession, is hand it off. We're professionals at handing it off to
Yeah.
someone else to deal with. And I don't know, I don't think that's by design. I think it's just by default. Because remember,
Mm-hmm.
we have episodes talking about jurisdictional lines. They get caught in that hamster wheel a lot,
Yeah. Yeah, they do.
and they get caught in our universe of rules and regulations, general orders and SOPs. They get caught in that too. And all they want is the answer to their question, or to at least, at the very least, be spoken to as if their problem is important.
Mm-hmm. Which, I mean, you know, it is important, like, but in perspective, like, to us from the police department, your bicycle that was stolen 2 weeks ago is less important than the 952 other calls that are going on right now.
Absolutely.
But to you, you're like, this is my bicycle. I want it back.
Yeah.
But I'm like, yeah, but this car just exploded on the highway, so
Yes.
you're not going to get it back right now.
I
And
mean, and one day maybe, but it's certainly not going to be today.
mm-hmm,
And I think sometimes as a profession, and rightfully so, we prioritize so automatically that we forget that for Joe Citizen, unless
mm-hmm,
of course it is an exigent and or emergent set of circumstances, they don't understand that.
mm-hmm,
We are the learned friend that says, "Okay, I know this doesn't make any sense to you, but XYZ, this is how it really is." And what I find helps is to appeal to their logic sometimes. When they say, "Well, if I was being shot at, you would be here right now." Actually, you're 100% right about that,
mm-hmm.
because we deal with life and death emergencies first, and then we ratchet down from there. And I'm certain that as a citizen who pays taxes, you would expect for your police department to use that kind of logic to make sure that the emergent life threatening things are being dealt with first, and then ratchet down from there. And I realize it's frustrating for you, but I'm sure if you stop and think about it, you will agree that it has to be this way. It's just
Mm-hmm.
unfortunate that you're caught in this situation right now. And most of the time they get real quiet,
Yeah,
and then they're like, "But I
you right.
still think it's da 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 da." You still get that,
Mm-hmm.
but a lot of times I know you guys have more important things to do. That's not what I mean. I don't mean more important. I mean more urgent.
Yes, exactly, and that is I think a great distinction because, you know, every call we get is going to be the most important call to the person, but
Mhm.
it may not be the most urgent call
Sure.
because things have to take priority. And kind of going back to your concept of the handoff, I think, especially in communications, we bear the brunt of a lot of that because everybody knows our number, right?
Ain't that the truth? Wow.
Yeah.
You're right.
So,
Duh.
there- so anybody anywhere from anything is gonna be like, oh, you need to talk to the police. Boom. here's communications, and
Unless you're Rose from the Golden Girls asking, "Can you give me the number for 911?" That's usually
yeah,
not the case.
no, no, it's but
Everybody knows this number. They advertise it everywhere.
yeah, I mean it's been around for what 60 years now, 62 years.
Yeah,
There's a question for you.
yeah.
But
Never
yeah,
would have
like
got that
so
one, but okay.
it you know we get a lot of those people that are trying to find out about their cases or want different
Hmm.
things to happen on their cases, and most departments, their communications division, are all civilian employees.
Hmm.
So like we don't have the ability to like go collect somebody's evidence or something like that. Like they need to talk to a sworn officer for a lot
Yes.
of their issues. And it's tough to kind of you know appease them in terms of letting them understand, like, yes, what's happening to you is important, but it's not
Hmm.
urgent, as you said. But also just constantly getting that, because especially if it's like a repeat caller, they're going to always filter down to 911.
Yeah, and that's okay because that's like you said, that is a well for the states for sure. It is a
Hmm.
universal number. It is universal. It's just about everywhere, unless you're in the most rural of rural places where they still have a 10-digit number that they call. But most don't have to do that. And
Hmm.
the number that they that the number that is synonymous with I need help, regardless of the kind of help you need, is what? Those
Yep.
three numbers. And I think for us, anyone that is in a position to receive a complaint, whether it be on the front line or somewhere in between or at, say, our level, it's important for us to remember, I think, make sure that they know that it's important. The reason that the calling is important, however, it just may not be as emergent. And I think that's where we may miss it sometimes or we drop the ball. We forget
Hmm.
to let them know, yes, your call is absolutely important. And if I could do what it is you're asking, I promise I would do it because it's why we're here.
Yeah. Ultimately, yeah. That's why we all are in this profession.
Yeah.
Another technique I try and abide by as best I can is to really, and it's the same for, when you're taking a 911 call, when you have an irate complainant, is to keep an even low tone, because
Yes.
not only does that help the other person, stop from escalating, but
Hmm.
it helps you from kind of getting up there, because people can say things that'll upset you.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Shocking.
Yeah. And it's just like, okay, I need to remember to maintain low tones. Ooze fraba, get that real zen kind of going. Because otherwise, it's just going to be a disaster.
But you know what? There's something to be said about that too, because while I agree with you 1000%, you have to be, there's a fine line between remaining calm and coming off as disinterested.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah,
And like,
because you
yeah.
don't want to be so calm that they wonder, are okay, that you become robotic.
Hmm.
And people are not stupid. Just because they cannot see your face doesn't mean that they can't read the energy that's coming across the line when you sound absolutely disinterested.
Hmm. Yeah. Disinterested or, just
Don't care.
exasperated.
Yeah, that
Yeah.
too. Or I just don't care.
Hmm.
Or when you make that fatal mistake, which is the mistake that I know I've made before, which is I begin to match
Mm.
their attitude, or I become righteously indignant because they don't understand the ultimately important work that I'm doing and the fact that they are interrupting this life-saving important supervisory work that I'm doing every day as a first responder. How dare they not understand that?
Hmm.
You get into that pride area and now your chest is puffed up and now you feel like you have to defend everything.
Hmm. And like I for one have never gotten upset in my life, but like I'm glad that you were able to kind of elucidate on that a little bit.
You know what? Everybody duck. right now, even those that are cannot see us right now. You should probably duck because there's got to be a lightning bolt coming from somewhere. Because while Gary does not tend to blow up, I have seen the most lovely shade of red come across his face when he gets really, really mad. Doesn't happen
Yeah, yeah.
often, but I have seen it.
I wear my emotions on my sleeve sometimes, but yeah, it's just so critical to stay. There's an expression, be on the ball about
Hmm.
something, and so I think that's really applicable here because you hear that expression a lot, but when you think about it, be on the ball. What the heck does that mean? You're balancing on a ball, so you have
Yeah,
to stay very even and no sudden movements. And
yeah.
if like you go too far one way or too far the other way, you're going to fall off.
That's
So
excellent. I have to say, I like that. That's really good.
yeah, and like it's the same way with like trying to maintain your emotions. You don't want to pull too far back and
Hmm.
become disinterested. You don't want to get uh, and like then you don't want to juke and jive, but like
Right.
it's you want to stay as even as possible because if you start to deviate from that, it's gonna go downhill. And y-
It can go sideways, and it does not take
mhm,
long for that to happen. But I like the way you said that. It is staying on the ball, which translates into balance. In everything that we are doing, balance is required. So if you're going to be dealing with a complaint, and I'm going to adapt that actually because it's really brilliant. I like the way you put that. It
thank
is
you.
to remain as balanced as possible in my approach to the call. And
Hmm.
that, in doing that, that recipe looks like don't become angry, don't don't become flip and dismissive, don't become disinterested, but yes, have some empathy for what they're going through.
Hmm.
But stay while staying true to what your boundaries are in the way that you can address their complaint. You can't give them everything they want, but maybe you can give them some of what they want.
Yeah, and ultimately sometimes you can't. And
Mhm.
I think that kind of segues nicely into sort of how do you disconnect from somebody that uh, is either uh, just being very vulgar and mean, or
Mhm.
just you've been on this merry-go-round with them for about 20-25 minutes, and you're ready to get
It's
off. How
going
do you
nowhere.
kind of like, yeah.
Yeah, it's going nowhere. I usually, how do I usually do that? I will say something like, ma'am or sir. I usually try to get their name though, because they'll give me their name, and I usually try to get the name back from them,
Hmm.
and I try to jot it down in front of me so that when I have an opportunity, I can use their name. Depending on how they've given it to you, Mr. or Mrs. or whatever. Let's just say Jack, for instance. I'll say, we've been on this roller coaster for a while and we're getting nowhere. Jack, look, I am so sorry that I cannot do what it is that you have asked. I have exhausted all of my options. And at this point, unless we can come up with something new for me to address for you, then I'm going to have to bid you a good day or a good
Hmm.
afternoon or a good night. And, depending on how they receive that, I will try it again. And it's been known to happen where I have said, okay, well, obviously we're not going to resolve. We're at an impasse. So I can't stay on the line because I have duties and things that I have to address. So with that, I'm going to disconnect this call and I want you to have a good night and take care of yourself. I wait a
Hmm.
couple of heartbeats and then I disconnect. Done.
Yeah. Yeah, and that is a really. I'm glad you put it that way because throughout that whole explanation, you're very even keel. You're very clear in your diction, just as you are when you're talking to those people, and
Hmm.
you're staying on the ball, uh,
I
and
like that's so
and
good.
and yeah, like you do want to be professional because just because somebody is calling in to 911 does not mean that we can't hang up on them. Like
No.
if they're just monopolizing our time and we're
Hmm.
not getting anywhere, we can disconnect. We really try not to on
Sure.
uh, a way that's not a mutual want to disconnect, but
Hmm.
ultimately, if they're just gonna just call and like, if you're not getting anywhere, then there's no reason to continue the conversation.
Yeah. And I
And
think
yeah.
and you have to come up with a way. And it took me a long time to find that script and commit it not so much to memory, but really own it. Because I really do
Hmm.
feel that way. When I get to that place, it is because I have done everything that I can think of. And I
Yeah.
have offered everything that I can offer that's, within my authority to offer. And we are literally at an impasse. And I don't know where I got it from, couldn't tell you. But that word, it works. We are at an
Hmm.
impasse. There's
Yeah.
there's nowhere else for us to go here. I cannot help you any further than what I have offered to do, and you're not receiving what I'm giving you. So we are at an impasse. There's nowhere else for us to go, and I cannot stay on the line with you because I work in emergency services. I have stuff to do. So there's
Yeah.
that.
No. Yeah. And that's a very good way to put that. And I think that also, like, sometimes you will have people that are really belligerent towards you and
Hmm.
rude, and
Hmm.
those people I like to remind them. I'll say, like, uh, you know Bill, I'm giving you uh, respect. I need you to give me that same level of respect back.
I've heard you
Um,
say that many times. Yep.
yeah, I like how is it that I like to put it? I'm
Oh,
going to
wait,
need you
wait,
to take
wait.
a big old step back and give me the kind of respect that I'm giving you.
Yeah, well, you'll say, well, so and so, I've all this the entire time we've been on this phone or we've been having this conversation, I have extended you respect. Now I'm going to ask you to give me back the same or something like that. And you
Hmm.
kind of let it go for a little bit. And if they calm down, you continue on and you do a really good job of staying in the tone that you are in like right now. Me, I'm an
Hmm.
animated person. I'm up, down, up, what? Nobody knew, in case you didn't know.
Yeah.
This Erica
That's why
right
you need to
now,
watch it on YouTube. You'll see her bouncing all
seriously,
around.
ain't that the truth? So the same tone that I am using now is just me. But
Hmm.
you don't do that. You stay right there so that when you do go up a little bit, those of us who know you well go, uh oh, here it
Yep.
comes. It's about to get
Yep.
crunk now. Oh my God, Gary's about to lose it. And even when you do lose it, that's what you say.
Hmm.
Now, look, so
Yeah.
and so, I have been, the entire time we've been talking, I have extended you a level of respect, and I'm going to insist that you give me back the same. And if you can't do that, then I'm going to have to end this conversation. I'm like, oh my God, that is so good. Yeah,
Yeah. I've refined that over many, many of those conversations over the years. So,
indeed. Just like my
yeah.
impasse. My
Yep.
impasse and you're absolutely right. If your house was on fire, we absolutely would already be there. As a matter of fact, half of the resources that I have at my disposal would almost already be there. But since that's not the case, and I think you would agree that your emergency services should have a level of, we should be able to discern whether or not it's a real emergency or not, right? Isn't that what you pay your taxes for?
Hmm. Yeah. Because how can they argue with that?
I learned that. And I could not tell you where I got either of those from, but
Hmm.
they've just evolved over years of having these kinds of conversations, whether they be escalated to a supervisor level or the 911 operator, because I've been the 911 operator who gets that call and they're mad about it. And my goal then was to try to keep it off the supervisor's desk. If I can address it now, because half the time they're by the time they ask for a supervisor, they're just mad. They're already mad. Then when they
Hmm.
get you know, operator 65321 on the phone. They can't help either. And now they're even more mad because they're figuring the person that they're about to talk to is just going to give them more of the same runaround they just got. And they just have however long it takes for the warm transfer to happen. They're just cooking up in their head all kinds of extra.
Yeah.
So I try
Hmm.
my best to, I try to de-escalate. And these things that we're talking about, if you're a frontline 911 operator or a dispatcher and you happen to find yourself on the phone with an irate person, any of these techniques you can employ yourself to try to keep it from escalating up. You're
Hmm.
empowered to do that. Anybody that works in emergency services that answers 911 and or non-emergency calls, you're empowered to do the same thing. You don't have to wait
Hmm.
for a supervisor.
Absolutely.
But
Yeah. And
my
like,
last tip would be though, is recognize when you're in over your head
Yes.
and
That
get
is a
up. That's
fantastic tip.
Yeah, yeah. Recognize when you're in over your head, when you have exhausted your level of authority, take it up. Get off the phone before you make it worse.
Hmm.
That's why God made supervisors. Make them earn their
Hmm.
keep.
Yep. Yep. I agree with that. And I also, I also agree that, like, um, these techniques that we're talking about are just as interchangeable, talking as a 911 operator or a supervisor.
Mhm,
We've been kind of talking about them more from a supervisor standpoint because we usually are on the phone with them for a lot longer. Because if
mhm.
you're, sort of a frontline 911 operator, the goal is to get on and off of the phone as quickly as possible so you can get to the next,
Sure.
actual emergency call. So
Right.
these kind of complainy calls, uh, we don't want, like, you guys to be tied up with them because not only are they
Right.
very very frustrating, uh,
Yes.
and we want you to stay fresh for the next horrific thing you hear in the headset. Uh,
Yes. Absolutely true. So true.
but they eat up a lot of time,
Mhm.
and a lot of times pointlessly. So you know get on to the next call where you can actually help somebody rather than just somebody who's going to say the same thing for 20 minutes.
Well
Um,
said.
my last tip, I guess, would be that uh, be cognizant of yourself. If you
Mhm.
feel yourself starting to get upset, you don't have to continue the conversation. You
Very
can
true.
put them on hold. If you're a supervisor, you can turn to, one of your teammates and say, "Hey, I need you to talk to this guy. Uh, I can't do it right now."
Yeah.
Um, and there's no shame in that. It's always a better idea to be aware of yourself, and when you've reached your limit, uh,
Yes.
and then be like, "Okay, I'm going on a smoke break. Don't bother me," or whatever. Um,
It's smart though. You're right.
it,
Very good advice. All of it.
mm, yeah, and really, like, in life in general, if you feel like you're at your limit, just take a break. Don't do things when you're like getting crazy.
All of that.
Yeah.
Yes. Agreed.
Although, if people listen to that, I guess we'd be out of a job. So we'll see what
True that.
happens.
Agreed. Yep.
Well, we hope that you guys found this a very agreeable episode as well, and hope that we were able to maybe give you some tips and tricks in your own trade, whether you are answering 911 calls or a supervisor or any level in between. And
Hmm.
we appreciate you all for watching and listening. If you like what you saw, please be sure to subscribe and like. And if you have any comments, you can always email us at lifeline911podcast@gmail.com. From all of us at Lifeline 911, I'm Gary,
I'm Erica.
and we will see you next week.
Thank you for watching our production of Lifeline 911. If you have any questions about today's topic or topics you'd like us to cover in the future, please reach out to us at lifeline911podcast@gmail.com. This has been a production of Lifeline 911 Podcast, copyright 2025. From all of us at Lifeline, stay safe out there. And until next time, this is Lifeline 911 signing off.